I yell real loud, so I don't think I need this. If anybody can't hear me, please let me know. I got pulled kicking and screaming into politics this time. I didn't want to do it. I'd rather be home painting. That's what I'd like to do at night. I paint pictures and try to sell them. But I want to tell you a couple things. One of the things I want to tell you is why I got involved in the first place with term limits. Secondly, the history of term limits in this state. And thirdly, what we can do and what's facing us today. And I got involved because my brother called me one day in 1991 and said, "Tim, you won't believe it, but two people in Arkansas, one guy from Cabot, one guy from Benton, is writing a term limit amendment, and you need to get involved." I said, "I do." "Oh." I said, "Well, I'm not even sure if I'm for it." He goes, "Not even for it?" I said, "Well, don't get me wrong. The 22nd Amendment is wonderful, and I really think the term limit on the president just makes sense. Don't want anybody in there for that long. Don't want anybody to have that much power. It's so un-American to have that much power in a government official. So it's worked out really well. But I'm just not so sure about it in theory, and I'm not sure if we should bring it to the state of Arkansas." He goes, "Tim, what's your problem with it?" I said, "Well, doesn't it limit our choice?" He said, "Did you have a choice at the polls this November?" I said, "Well, no, that's right. My legislator didn't have an opponent for us. In fact, never before term limits had more than 50% of legislators ever had an opponent in November. Never. They do now. They do now." I said, "Oh, you're right, you're right." He goes, 3 times as many choices when there's an open seat. That's real choices." You're right. Well, what about expertise? Won't we lose expertise? And after he stopped laughing, he said, "I could go out my front door right now and pick 435 people. Doesn't matter who they are. Doesn't matter what age they are. Bring them into Congress and we wouldn't be $17 trillion in debt." I'm tired of hearing about people that are experts. Experts at what? They don't give tests up there. I haven't seen any tests given to legislators. We need real expertise up there. And finally, we talked for a while, and I finally said, "Okay, yeah, I'll do it." And I went to the first meeting, and I didn't know if I got one up and got a cup of coffee or what. But when I came back, I was a statewide petition director. None of these people, and there's 5 people in this room, none of them had any political experience whatsoever. Well, how are we going to change the state of Arkansas with no political experience? But we got a petition done, and we went to the people, and I couldn't believe the reaction. People were saying, "Can I sign twice?" Unfortunately, they couldn't, although some of the people, Anyway, we got on the ballot. It was only the second time in Arkansas history that all volunteer effort reached the ballot. We didn't pay one petition. It was an all volunteer effort. At the end, petitions were coming in from people we had never talked to before. This was the most grassroots thing I've ever seen in my life. Not one legislator helped us. Not one. Somehow we did this without, not one government official helped us. Not one lobbyist helped us.
We the people.
That's right. And we had a campaign, and in the end, 500,000 Arkansas voters in the biggest yes vote in Arkansas history said yes to term limits, and term limits became the law. 60% of the vote. We were kind of amazed. 7 percentage points better than Bill Clinton. Has anybody heard of him? He was running for president for the first time. We beat him by 7 percentage points in the state. That's how the people felt about term limits. Now, it became the law of the land, a constitutional amendment, became part of the Constitution of the state of Arkansas. And guess what the legislative reaction to that was? These are the people that are sworn to do two things. They are sworn to uphold the Constitution, and they're sworn to represent their constituents. They asked the court to void our vote. There was only 2 legislators that dismissed them from the case. It was Randy Bryant in Northwest Arkansas and Mark Rival in Little Rock, a Republican and a Democrat. Only people, though, everybody else in the legislature asked the court to void our vote, 500,000 Arkansans, to cancel it. That's not representing us. That's not representing the Constitution. That's not protecting the Constitution. But that's their reaction. In 2004, they brought in another amendment to the ballot. It was called the Term Limits Amendment, and they were going to enact term limits. And that's the word they used, enact term limits. And I thought, well, it seems today that we already have it. But that's what they put, and they were going to double their terms. Didn't put double, didn't say lengthen, didn't say extend term limits. It said to enact term limits. And we thought that was a little bit deceptive. But we went around the state again, a couple of us, told the voters, and we didn't get 60% of the vote. We got 70%. They had the chance to have, 6 years in the, or instead of 6 years, it was going to be 12 years in the House. Instead of 8 years in the Senate, it was going to be 16 years in the Senate. And the voters said, no, we like it the way it is. And they tried, every legislator worked for it, except 2 government officials were against it. And it was the late Winthrop Paul Rockefeller and the late governor, the past governor, Michael. And they said, you know, we could get behind it, but we're not going to get behind it unless you go to the people and get 100,000 signatures first. Because we want to make sure it's from the people. This looks like a legislative scheme. And it was. And that's why we won with 70% of the vote.